Welcome, 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 everyone. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited that we are here, we are present, and that today is Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. Just in case you weren't sure of the date, I've decided that I'm going to start reminding people when I go live what day it is. I feel like we'll get into that, what I feel like in a second. I'm overwhelmed with happiness and joy because my esteemed colleague, Tania Rosario Mendez, is here with us today from Taller Salud. That's the only Spanish you're going to get out of me during this broadcast. Thank you. Welcome, Tania. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, I'm so excited. We're gonna get this party started today. It's gonna be amazing. So I wanted to talk to you just a smidgen before we get started. Like, do you feel like the days have shifted and that more and more you're asking the question, like, what is it? Like things are out of whack.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And days are longer also.
They're not, they're
Sometimes.
not, they're not getting shorter, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm putting your payment links in the as a pinned comment because I want people, when we begin talking about you and who you are and the work that you do in Puerto Rico, that's very important. Especially to the communities of Black women and non-men that are down there. I want people to know where to go to give to your organization. And so if it's okay, I'd like to introduce you to my following because I'm very
Mhm.
happy you're here. And we're going to talk about how we know each other. All right.
Of course.
Thank you. So Tania Rosario is a feminist and public health specialist with over 15 years of experience leading community organization and mobilization efforts in Puerto Rico. She has a solid track record as a transdisciplinary freelance artist, popular educator, and women and girls' rights advocate. Tania is a diligent, methodical, and skilled consultant in the design and implementation of interdisciplinary educational and social transformation projects and programs for a wide range of populations. And like I said, for those who are joining us, this is about to be an amazing conversation. We're going to keep it
Mhm.
cute, we're going to keep it light, but we're going to talk about some very serious things. So, Tania, welcome to this episode of The Full Set.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
So let me talk about how I ran across you. So when I first met you, um, I wasn't, you're laughing. I wasn't expecting the powerhouse that I got, if I can be honest, right? You were very quiet and you were very reserved and you were very apropos. And when you began speaking, it was during the Northeastern panel that we did together.
Hmm.
I feel like the years are now molding together. So was it last year that we did the panel? I think it was March of last year.
Yes.
And you went onto the stage and you gave this paper about Hurricane Maria and the devastating impacts it had on the island of Puerto Rico, which is a U.S. territory. And it's just like seeing it in real time and hearing it from a first person experience. It was really unnerving and I couldn't believe it. Like, and I wonder if this is what people think when they hear our stories, right? Like I just can't, but this can't be true. And the devastation that still exists some 3 years later. And I think, you were brilliant when you made the parallels between Hurricane Katrina and how the city of New Orleans and its surrounding towns are still rebuilding, even after all of these years, because it's the nature, it's the ethnicity of the people who are affected that is causing.
Hmm.
So when you said that, I was like, I was in my seat because everybody else was boring. I'm sorry, everybody else that was there, but I was in my seat and I was like, oh my God, I came here to see Moya Bailey talk. And then this woman, I said, I have to connect with you. So I'm glad that I did connect with you. And I told you, I said, you and I are going to see each other again, so I'm very happy to
Yeah.
have you here.
I remember the panel. And of course, I remember your talk as well.
I made those
I
white
think
people mad.
I think it was the first time I was having a really hard time not to laugh. Uh, in an audience of well-intentioned people
I like
with
how
a
you said
huge,
people.
yeah, with a huge um, blind spot,
Mm,
right? So
right,
for me, it's always, I always have this sense of responsibility of being mindful of my own blind spots in life and shedding light on other people's on
right.
other people's blind spots when they are in complex situations.
Right.
So it was it was superb. So yes, definitely my adult life is before and after Hurricane Maria, um, in many senses. Um, I don't know if that is a true statement for all my generation,
Okay.
but the role I ended up playing, which was it was very circumstantial. It was not something that we planned at all. Um, it just transformed many of my perspectives on just on on justice and equality and access and um, how the framing of disasters as natural instead of political
Right.
can be so dangerous. So I made it, I could commit to that purpose, and everywhere I could, you know, get heard, I would, use it, especially during the first 2 years after the hurricane.
So what was it like? Um, and I'm asking this because I feel like I want to be like very forthright with you. I feel like I wasn't like these are not my questions. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, shout out to Olivia Fenty, who is one of my interns, and she came up with half of the questions for today. But I want to ask because I see like I still see the pain like in your face, and I just want to not pry, but to for you to share a little bit of what it was like because I think sometimes when we experience violence or we experience trauma, kind of like compartmentalize it and we say everything is fine, you know. It's been so long, everything is fine. So can you share with us, like, this is going on in Puerto Rico and there's like simultaneous hurricanes happening right in the southern region of the United States, but it's all
Mhm.
Black and brown people that this is happening to. I know people are going to get upset, oh, it was white people involved too, but affected disproportionately is Black and brown people. And so for you going through it, you then organizing through that, which is what most people of color are doing out here anyways. What was that like for you?
Um, I think it was first it still is. It's I don't see it on the past. We have current uh, work that is absolutely centered on the ravaged communities that uh, the hurricane left, and then the government abandoned. So we are still doing work that is absolutely rooted in our commitment to a just recovery that was born after the hurricane.
Right.
Um, so for me, it's very much a present experience, and at the same time, because we've had um, other disasters afterwards, we had we had major I don't know how to translate major social upheaval during the summer, and the governor resigned So we had
Yeah.
massive protests on the streets, and the governor was forced to resign. And then we had some earthquakes, and then we have COVID. So we've been on a permanent emergency response kind of mode,
Right.
so to speak,
Right.
since the hurricanes. But during the very first months after the hurricane, we were very much running through adrenaline, drives. So we were just responding in the ways we thought were um, needed more urgently, and
Right.
also in ways in which we were sure that we were protecting the decision making process,
Right.
so that our women from our leadership groups and the survivors group, like the women were making the decisions daily, and you need to protect that very
Right.
intentionally, because if not, um, you end up responding to funders or to um, I don't know, partners or just external interests that are not directly affected. And you have deadlines, and you sign on agreements, and this puts up pressures on organizations. So you really need to be intentional into um, setting the rhythm in which you're going to work in order to protect um, the community's rhythm. And that is, you can't impose that. Communities have their own um, uh, their own, internal dances on how to, uh,
Mira la
you know,
poética. Their own
yeah,
internal dances.
because it's a dance. You move
No,
forward
it
and
is.
backward, and you have to keep the balance into what you
Mm-hmm.
want, what the other want, and the external things, and the
Mm-hmm.
Loisa, because Loisa has this particular um, lens through which people understand, what is folkloric, or what is to be black and also Puerto Rican, and what does that exactly means. And so they sometimes they struggle with the expectations and the reality of you know of life. So it is definitely a dance, and if you impose um, externally your own agenda, that violence disrupts the
Mm,
any disrupts the beauty it would have. So, but you
right.
really have to be intentional, because you can do it. Even you can um, well intended, you can have unintended consequences
Right.
um, that are just bad for the process, that become obstacles.
So when I think about, I want, before I ask the question about Loisa and about Blackness in Puerto Rico, I want you to, because you said something that very, very much stood out to me. You said that you don't feel like it is something that it has happened, that the hurricane and the social unrest and now COVID-19 are things that are still in a stasis. They're still very much happening, and there was no recovery from any of the aforementioned things before COVID-19, if I'm understanding you correctly. And so now you're dealing with the trauma and what still exists from the rubble. And now you're dealing with the salaciousness of this global pandemic in which, you're caught in. And I
Yeah.
guess I guess my question would be, what is Taller Salud, the organization in which you are an executive director, and also what is I know that it's an organization that has been around for 40 years. I follow you guys ever since I met you, and I think that you do amazing work. I love seeing the pictures of the artwork and the women like gathering together and holding circle processes, and it's so amazing. So if you could, from your experience, talk about what Taller Salud is and why it's important to the communities it services, that would be amazing.
Well, Taller Salud is a feminist organization, and
Unheard of. I love it.
so we, in 40 years, we've had several several identities, and we've moved through different framings of our work, but at the
Because you
very
started
core,
off as reproductive rights, right?
yeah, because it started out as a feminist collective. It didn't start it out as a nonprofit,
Oh,
and
wow.
it
Okay.
stayed as a feminist collective for a decade, doing only advocacy work and organizing. So
Like
so after
grassroots
that,
organizing. That's what you're talking
yes,
about, right? Okay.
yeah, yeah, and then it transitioned into a nonprofit model in order to provide direct service to the same communities it was organizing at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it kind of transitioned each decade through different um, major shifts internally. But I think that it's important. What is important for me is that at the core, um, the way we understand feminism and the way we understand health has not changed.
Right.
So we understand feminism as a practice. We don't understand feminism as a as a static set of characteristics or definitions. So for us, the practice of feminism um, um, is the I'm having trouble translating, and I'm understanding that I am really poetic in Spanish because I can't translate. I can't translate
No,
myself.
I've heard you speak Spanish. I'm like, wow.
Okay, so yeah, so the feminist practice requires self-discipline and requires to be open to everything. So for us, the experience of having to lead an emergency response,
Mm.
was was a was a wonderful opportunity to embrace new new aspects of this feminist practice. How do you uplift women's leadership as a commitment, as a
Right.
political commitment? How do you actually do that and keep on doing that daily? Because it sounds pretty, but it's very difficult to do. Um, so, so that's what Taller Salud is. It's a feminist organization that works in two realms. We provide direct service to different populations that most of which reside in Loíza, which is a small coastal town located east of San Juan.
And San Juan is the capital of Puerto Rico.
San Juan is the capital city, exactly. And Loíza is a town that got bypassed by progress. So
Sorry, I ummed you. You said that it's a town that got bypassed by okay?
By progress. Yeah, the progress that some people understand. So the meaning is that the construction of the highway bypassed the town. So you have to take a detour to actually go into the town, and the town only has one main route, one entrance, one exit. So all the neighborhoods are pockets that either end up in the sea or in a mangrove, in a giant mangrove. So there's you it's like a small labyrinth, so to speak. So then you have a concrete and abstract isolation. You have specific concrete isolation that happened through that bypass, and the design and political decisions that were made to leave the town out of the main route to progress, and economic development, and the possibility of having shopping malls or big, you know, stores established, and then you
Right.
have the symbolic isolation. You know, the how people understand that, how people internally assimilate isolation and make it a part of the social dynamics. So that makes Loisa very unique in a lot of ways. So a lot of things stayed protected. Nobody knew. Nobody went to the town that weren't from there. So a
Right.
lot of cultural manifestations, a lot of um, cultural traditions like food.
They
It was
still
something that,
remain. It's not
oh
been
yes,
whitewashed, so to speak.
yes, it remains till today. So you have in the good side of that, you have a lot of strength that people can draw from those traditions that are ancestral and they own. And then you have all the sorrow and the mourning of exclusion and being confined to endless violent cycles because you don't belong, you know, because somebody decided that, you know, you could just bypass these people and forget they exist.
What
So
is the
all of
main reason why the people of Loiza were bypassed?
because Loiza is a historically black community. It was founded by former slaves that when they ran away from the hacienda, they found a spot that was difficult for the Spanish to reach because it was protected by giant mangroves. So they, I don't know if the word is maroon. We call this, the word in Spanish is cimarrón. I don't know if the translation is maroon or some word like that, but
Pero ¿cómo
the
significará en este momento?
cimarrón is runaway slave.
Okay,
You free yourself and you run
okay,
away and you live in liberty,
okay.
but you were chased because the liberty was not granted to you.
Right.
So
Okay.
because of that, because it was founded by as a former slave village, um, it retained some of those dynamics of being not trusting outsiders, and you know and in order to survive, organizing themselves in small clusters of families that are close and small and circular and difficult to enter. So um, that over time, of course, developed into a small community of around 30,000 people,
Wow.
with a vast
And I think of Puerto
majority.
Rico as such a small island. Like it takes me no more than 6 hours to get from end to end, you know. So
Yes.
when you say 30,000 and thinking of Black people, like I just want to tell people who are watching or who will listen later, if you go to Google and you type in any word, normative, like whatever a normative word would be, if you say model, right? A lot of whiteness will come up. If you say England, a lot of whiteness will come up. It's like as if white is the default. If you type in Loiza, Loiza, I was telling my friend, it's I have goosebumps because correct images of what people from Loiza look like, it automatically comes up as Afro Caribbean. It comes up as Black. It comes up as Afro Latinx. It comes up, and it's just beautiful seeing images of people that look like me and darker than me. And when I hear you say, it was bypassed, I just think about the resiliency, which is a triggering word, from
Mhm.
from that panel. I think about the resiliency of Black people that we had to free ourselves because no one else is going to do it, and it kind of sets the
Exactly.
tone for how Afrofuturism looks. Right, we have to continuously reinvent ourselves, and I think about, like, I went to the Google and it says that slavery ended in Puerto Rico in 1873. And of course, that's probably not the truth, because as we know, a lot of slave enslavement and what is the word? When you're an indentured servant, still continued on well into the 1900s. And so this is very like heartwarming. I knew about Louisa because I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and there's a huge community in Boston.
Yeah.
Um, and I used to always wonder, like, why are these Puerto Rican people not like regular Puerto Rican people? And so that you say that they retained their culture, to me means that they have retained their Africanness, that to me that is still a very sacred thing. And then I think about, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but a few of my friends celebrate deities such as Atabi. Atabi? Is that how you pronounce it?
Atabey. Atabey.
Atabe. Yes, sorry, I'm not Puerto Rican. So, but there's that, right? And I think about the African markings that are on these spiritual deities, and so it really makes me feel like a sense of pride that is still being recognized and that people are still celebrating their Blackness. Even amongst other people of color who say, that's, you know, I think about growing up and it was always like Puerto Ricans feeling some type of way about Dominicans, Dominicans feeling some type of way about Puerto Ricans, everybody hating Mexicans. I know, like, what I'm saying? Like, and it's just very interesting, like the anti-Blackness that happens, and like the emotional anti-Blackness that happens, but how it perpetuates in the physical sense and how it stops a highway being built so that people could get by and have transportation, how it stops aid when the aid stops in Puerto Rico and it's on hold. You and I talked about COVID, and I ask you, there's like this rumor that I'm hearing that a lot of Puerto Rican people were not receiving their stimulus checks, and you explained it to me. And can you explain to everyone like what the mix-up was that about?
I don't know. Sometimes I assume that people understand Puerto Rico's relationship to the U.S., and I'm not sure that that is a given.
Mm.
Uh,
Explícame
so
claro. I know I said I wasn't going to speak
yeah,
Spanish, but okay, go ahead.
it's long, so I'm just gonna summarize it
Come
somehow.
on, synopsis. Give me a synopsis. Come on.
Yeah. So Puerto Rico basically uh, is a military occupied territory.
A military
Um,
occupied territory. Okay.
yeah, it
I didn't even
belongs.
know. I heard now that there is like, is it in Vieques that there's like a military base? I didn't know that because I've been to Puerto Rico and I would never have
I
known
don't.
it's a militarized territory.
I forget the number, but at a point there were over 30 military bases in Puerto Rico.
Wow.
Every coast, every coast of the island, and both offshore municipalities, Vieques and Culebra, had military bases, and every coast had several
Wow.
for the U.S. Navy, for the Air Force, and all the different departments of the Army. So, but I say that so that you can picture what that means. So it means that Puerto Rico belongs to the U.S. as a territory,
Okay.
but it's not a part of the U.S. It belongs to the U.S., but it's not a part. So what that means is that we don't control, the U.S. controls customs, borders, currency, defense, commerce related to Puerto Rico, but Puerto Ricans living in the island don't get to vote for the president or
Wow.
have any Congress representation at all. So that's it. That's plain facts. Um,
She said that's facts.
Yeah, because I
Okay.
don't want to give my opinion. I
Right.
just want to
No,
give you facts.
I didn't know that actually. I didn't know because you would think in my mind, like since it's not considered another country, you would think that when I hear you make the distinction that Puerto Rico is not a part of the US, I'm like, how, Sway? But then you just broke it down, like, that
Yeah,
there's no buy-in either way, you have your own government.
yeah. So we have a governor, just like in like a state. We don't get to have a president or a prime minister. We just get to have a governor. And the governor is invited to things like the Association of Southern Governors of the United States,
Oh,
things like
wow.
that. So this
Puerto Rico's
happens.
the southernmost government. Okay.
Yeah, but then at the same time, we don't have presence of U.S. parties in Puerto Rico. We don't vote for the Democrat or Republicans. We have our own local parties. Um, and if you visit and and move around the island, you will feel that you are someplace in Latin America. It
Mm-hmm.
feels like you are in any proud small country of Latin America.
Right.
You'd see the flags, you'd see you hear the music, everybody speaks Spanish, you won't see people speaking in English in Puerto Rico.
But they laugh
And
in English.
well, we some of us are bilingual like me
No,
or
no, I'm
myself.
fucking with you. I'm fucking with you. They laugh in English. I remember one time I visited and I had on chancletas, which are sandals. I had on
Uh-huh.
chancletas and in Puerto Rico, it rains often. And I went down the slopes at El Morro, which is like this big, huge Spanish fort in San Juan. And I was walking down just because there was like a little dulce cart there. He had like cotton candies and paletas and ice cream and all that stuff. And I was walking down and I slid in my trunk and everybody laughed at me and I felt like they were laughing in English. That's what I will say. Okay.
Uh, I'm sorry. I wasn't there.
See, you laughing in English too. Okay, all right.
Yeah, but we do it. We love in any language. So so the thing is that because of that because of that weird relationship, we get to have some federal uh, decisions get to be applied to Puerto Rico, and
Like, do you
some
have
get
to
to
fill out the census? Does that even matter in Puerto Rico?
yes, yes,
Okay.
we fill out the census. We like you can find data from Puerto Rico in the American Community Service.
Okay.
We use the United States Postal Service. We use zip codes, um, um, but Obamacare was only partially applied to Puerto Rico. So so federal policies can can or cannot apply, and we don't have a say on that.
Oh, wow.
It gets decided elsewhere. And so you would think because we are US, and the other thing crazy is that we are US citizens. We have US passports and we are not allowed to have a Puerto Rican passport. So if I move to Albany tomorrow,
You
I
gonna come be
can
my
vote
neighbor?
I can vote for the president in November.
Oh, wow.
I
Okay. Because
I
you would
can't
be a
run
registered voter here.
if I
Okay.
I'm the same Puerto Rican with the same passport, and in Puerto Rico, if you live in Puerto Rico, you can't vote or have any congressional representation. Not that I would want it that way, but just
Right.
saying,
It's
that
very
is a fact.
interesting that you said that. And I want to ask a clarifying question. So because I don't know much about it, but when they are looking for politicians say it's not about race, but they're always looking for the Black vote and they're always looking for the Latin vote, right? So
Mm-hmm.
but you're saying that if a Puerto Rican person resides in Puerto Rico, that they are not a part of that vote because they cannot vote in the primary or
That's
the
correct.
presidential race. Wow, I didn't know that. I feel like I learned something today. Thank you.
So we do have a 5 million diaspora spread it
Of
also the
course,
state
of course. I
that
know
vote.
Puerto Rican people in the Bronx. I lived in the Bronx for 10 years. They voting. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And I think it's very interesting that you just made that parallel that you as a Puerto Rican resident cannot vote, even though you are owned, your country is, your territory is owned by the United States. It's very weird to me. Like, it's a weird
yeah.
flex.
And so some immediate consequences of being a military occupied territory that has no control over borders. Um, it's I want to stress that because during disasters, having no control of your borders is the difference between life or death. So we are sure that we had thousands of deaths after the hurricane that could have been prevented if the borders, were controlled locally, and we could have accepted um, ships with aid from countries that are closer to Puerto
Right.
Rico, and
Like, what
and
country?
like Dominican Republic,
Yes.
like Colombia,
Right.
like Brazil.
Like Cuba.
So
Right.
well, Cuba is close, but I'm not sure Cuba could have sent a ship
No,
with,
they can, but it's because in general, right? Like the sanctions. So let me not get into that because that's a
yeah.
different conversation. They've shut
But
down my
they could
PayPal
have
right now talking about
helped. They
Cuba.
could have helped. Yeah, they could have helped and a lot. They could have sent
Right,
their
right,
doctors, and they could have helped. And we cannot accept that help. So that in terms of the hurricane or the earthquakes is a very, very specific consequence. And of course, right now during COVID, we have the same problems. We have to wait for the CDC's approval of things, and we have to send to Atlanta the to the test for results, and we are absolutely tied to whatever federal decisions are made related to the emergency. We also, we have some level of autonomy as the states have. So our governor decided, you know, the lockdown, the curfew, all of that was locally decided,
right.
but still, we are bound to decisions we don't take part of. And related to the stimulus, the same happens. Um, the both stimulus that have been approved and the Family First Act and the CARES Act, they all apply partially to Puerto Rico, and in combination with local policies or even stimulus that the government provided. Um, so I think that the 1,200 that came through the one of the stimulus, that that will get to the people that have paid federal taxes,
Right.
have filed taxes, and then I think there's a supplemental that is tied to nutritional assistance funds. That one is not applied to Puerto Rico. So stuff like that. So we would have to get into the details, but it's
So do Puerto
more
Ricans, are they
important and
eligible for
covering.
SNAP?
Yes, they are.
Okay, okay.
It's run locally with a combination of funds, but it is partially federally funded.
All right. Thank you so much for explaining it. There is a comment that I want to read to you from one of our viewers. And hold on one second. Well, I would have to go back now because I've muted out of it so many times trying to comment back and forth. But basically the young person was saying that they really appreciated your resilience for being in the midst of the trauma and still organizing through it, and that they wish you nothing but the best. That takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of effort. And I thought that that was pretty amazing that people are recognizing the work that not only you, but Taller Salud does in Puerto Rico. So thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you.
You said that's lovely. I want to talk to you about feminism in Puerto Rico because I know that Taller Salud is a feminist organization. I also know that you organize for women and girls' rights, right? There was right before quarantine started for me, you know, I saw like Bad Bunny share a video. I think he was on Saturday Night Live, and he had a skirt on, and he was saying like Alexa, hace muerte. Like it. Sorry, I forget the Spanish word, but is it muerte?
Yeah, muerte. Yeah.
Okay, so and then I was like, you know, what is this political statement? Because, you know, everybody that I know who's a grassroots organizer, when we make political statements, we make it with our t-shirts, you know? And so I
Mhm.
look up the story and I went down a rabbit hole, you know? And I thought about the story that this transgender woman, Alexa, who was loved by many, but also discarded by many, was murdered just for being a transgender woman. And I think about women's rights in Puerto Rico and like what that means in such it's the same capitalism. And so it comes over and it trickles over and it's very patriarchal. Como
Mhm.
significa machismo. It's very like
Mhm.
there's got to be this masculinity that, you know, a lot of people say is toxic masculinity, but some of my peers say there's no difference between masculinity and toxic masculinity. And so what is the Puerto Rico under a feminist lens? What does that Puerto Rico look like? Because everybody knows PR as a beautiful country. Esta es mi isla de me encanta, right? Everyone knows that. I have a little coquille on my dresser because it's just such a beautiful island. And when you think about the politics past the beauty, what does a beautiful Puerto Rico look like that includes women, women of color, Black women as not erasures, right? And more as fixtures and more revered spirits in the island.
Well, in my experience, um, working with women, especially women of color, or women that are owning their African descent, um, most of these women are feminist without knowing they are feminist,
Of
and
course.
and they are truly forces of nature. You know, they can really transform communities, like for real. So I was not as convinced 3 years ago, but after after this years and the things that I've seen, the strength and the willpower and the empathy and um, and the capacity. Um, I have no doubt that it's through leadership. It's through those women's leadership that change is gonna happen. So that would be my aspiration, and it's what drives our work right now, that we can somehow uh, build, create, co-design conditions to flourish, to
Right.
really thrive, and not having to only survive, forever. So that's what's driving us right now. That we know we deserve better. We deserve lives, free from fear and violence and poverty, and we're ready to fight for it. We
I
don't
heard
expect,
that.
we don't expect no one's gonna give it to us, but So you said something about self-care, and now that I'm saying that we're ready to fight, it
I was
came to
like,
my mind.
oh, did I stir something up inside of you?
I just wanted to bring that we're working with a concept that we're calling collective care instead of
Mm,
self-care. Um, so I understand the political um, affirmations around self-care. Uh, I think it belongs to some tendencies inside or within activism that require you to be self-sacrifice for the movement. So I understand
I
where
don't
it
know
comes
nothing about self-sacrificing for the movement. Okay. You mind
but
your business.
so we're challenging that. We're challenging
Okay.
that. If we really want to thrive uh, together, we need to transform that into collective care. Uh, that means interconnectedness, exchange. Um, it definitely means bringing equity because not everybody needs the same, and also being really really mindful and clear on your intentions. Um, and I think there's also a lot to learn about boundaries, um, especially
That's a
for
word that keeps
younger,
coming up for me. So go ahead, talk to me about boundaries.
especially about younger girls, because um, I think patriarchy rests into knowing that no one has ever taught us that we have a right to set boundaries, and it just rests that we
Mm,
won't learn, that we won't ever learn, that we won't teach our daughters. And it's just wrong. We can learn, we can teach, we can enforce boundaries, we can negotiate. We know how to do that. We just have to own it. But definitely, I think there's an important key into scaling up what feminism can bring to emergent uh, movements. So um, for me, feminism has been my school, my teacher, my practice, my homework, everything. And I'm grateful that I found it, as a framework to understand what was not making sense at all. Um, but I'm also aware that it has its blind spots and its limitations. So there's work to do, sister. There's work to do.
listen, when you talk about there's work to do, I had to give a shout out. I love Olivia. She came through in a clutch. Um, when we talk about um, the fact, like I just want to make sure I'm asking this question correctly. When we talk about the social and economic resources available to Black communities in Puerto Rico, more specifically Black women, doesn't there need to be a mention of Blackness, especially when we're looking at gender-based violence and Afro Latinx versus white women in Puerto Rico? Because I know a lot of Puerto Rican women. Believe me, this was my community for so many years. I was married to a Puerto Rican man for 10 years. So a lot of Puerto Rican women who are lighter skinned feel like, no, but I'm Black, because I'm Taino and like 1/10 of my root was, Black slave, right? But then it's like in the ways that we adopt whiteness because we're lighter skinned and we're supposed to act a certain way, or and then we end up discarding darker sisters of color, like especially like I think about how you describe it perfectly. Like there's a labyrinth and Loisa, it doesn't exist in the labyrinth. It's like inside but outside of it. And so how do we not replicate the same system of harm that white supremacy um, begs to us? Because if it's something that we're going through as women, feminism allots that we understand it. Sexual assault can happen to all women, and we understand that, right? But when we talk about gender-based violence as it relates to race, when a woman is Black and Latinx, or Black and Latina, because that is her naturalidad, or that is la herencia de ella, right? The heritage, and like the knowing and the being. And how do we mitigate the harm that white supremacy has taught us? Like, how do we center women of color and then say, and these women who are darker skinned or whose hair doesn't look like mine also are on the margins, and there's no room for error for them, like there is for us? I like to
Well,
ask good questions.
that is a difficult task. In Puerto Rico, for over 50 years, there was a lot of investment made into building the Puerto Rican myth of we are all the same, a product of a mixture of races. We are, one part Spanish, one part Taino, one part African, so we are all exactly the same. And Black people disappeared with this mixture, and there's no pure nothing here,
Right.
and so those myths were are so much a part of
They're like ingrained almost.
yeah, but like they are really a part of our truth. We really have to
Mm,
challenge it, because a lot of people just won't question it. Like they would they would state that as a truth. um and um that has several consequences. So one consequence has to do with people that look like me thinking they can say they are Afro-Caribbean
I hate to see it,
with,
sis. I hate to
with
see it.
without any, without any sense of that just being inappropriate, just really in a very honest way, really thinking um, that is correct to do. And then the other side of that um, is Black people buying into the notions that racism does not exist in Puerto Rico, and it only exists in your head. So you are imagining things. You are you have a complex. So you're thinking less of yourself because you have a complex, and you're imagining that, and that
I
causes
want to ask for clarification because you said Black people, but you mean like people of color thinking that the reason why Black people are always talking about this Blackness is because it's in your head. Like no one treats you this way. It's like that's the general consensus. I have a lot of Puerto Rican friends that are darker than me. And if I talk about, I'm really sad to say this, but I think it needs to be said. If I play, say we're all dancing to bachata all night long, right? And I decide I want to turn on a little bit of rap music, or I want to play a little, or if it's reggaeton, and then I want to put on American black rap, or if it's bachatera, like I'm listening to Jos Cosrante over here, and all of a sudden Luther Vandross comes on over, they might enjoy the song one or two, but in the slurred speech, because of the inebriations and the imbibement, it has come out on several occasions. Turn off that Black shit. And I'm
yeah.
like, wow, your mom, extremely Black. Your mom is Blacker than my mom. And it's just, I want not to focus on that because that is important, but I want us to like unpack how dangerous that is, because all we're doing is reinforcing. Like, if we can act white, if we can act respectable, if we can be refined and wear our red glasses and push them up on our nose, everything is going to be great. And really, we don't belong at that table because it's not for us anyways. Even if we were able to get a seat at that table, the table is filled with colonizers who have raped our mothers and our fathers, who have uh, literally held us down for decades, centuries, eons, it feels like. And this is still apparent. I just want us to be able, as lighter skinned people, to begin to like, that tapestry needs to happen, because then it's always going to be Black folks doing the most of the labor and having the knowledge, like, and saying, yeah, no, I get it because I'm Black and Latina. Or, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, how do we, as lighter skinned people, say to our own people, hey, actually, that's not correct. Like, okay, that's my question. How would you begin the conversation with somebody that looked like me or somebody that looked like you and say, actually, I feel uncomfortable you saying the N word because historically speaking, you're not the type of person that would be addressed to, you know?
Yeah, I think that the way I see it is that representation does matters. So it is a conversation to be had. Ask the question, why am I not seeing anywhere people that look like me? Why? How is that decided? And then the other part of that conversation has to do with, I'm not sure how to translate it, but in Spanish we say portavocía, which means being a spokesperson.
Right.
So I think that there's some work to do with strengthening capacities to be a spokesperson
Because the current
in
spokespersons for, go ahead, sorry.
yeah, but just especially in the groups that have been denied the right to speak for themselves.
Yes, because that's what I was going to say. I made a status. A lot of people got a little annoyed with me. You've been my Facebook friend for a year, so you already know what's up. But I made a status. I was like, why the hell are you congratulating Jennifer Lopez and Selena Gomez and all this other stuff for performance? Like, art is important. And maybe it might bring some attention, but it's that kind of platform, without actually saying the words, hey, let go of these children that are in cages. Hey, like, we stand in solidarity with the absurd and cruel and violent treatment of immigrants. Like, unless there's like a statement, sometimes the art is lost because everyone's so excited. And J Lo would not be. I mean, I love her. On the six, I lived in the Bronx 10 years. I get it, right? But when I think about women who struggle in the industry, who are Afro Latinx, and I think about Celia Cruz. I went to Miami with my friend, and the characters that they have of Celia Cruz are just grossly misdrawn, and they make her look almost sinister. Every real picture I've ever seen of her, she has a beautiful, que sonrisa, a beautiful smile on her face. And just the way that historically Black folks have been characterized, I think of Amara La Negra, even though she's Dominican. I think of, the fact that darker skinned women are not celebrated. And those are the women holding up the labor and saying, this is my experience. I experienced racism as a person of color. Yes, so you could be Latino, Latina, Latinx, and experience racism. But when it's Blackness plus your racism, when it's the skin color that meets first, when it's not the tongue, it's the appearance, like, that is something I wish that we could, and maybe the answer is not today, but it's definitely something I wish that we can bridge the gap on, because it is so important, the work that you guys are doing, but it shouldn't have to be this difficult, sis. Like, you understand what I'm saying? It shouldn't have to
Yeah,
be this.
yeah, definitely.
So the last question that I want to ask you is, being that Loiza has been one of PR's largest Black populations and is the birthplace for many African-inspired traditions in Puerto Rico, how does your programming also incorporate that huge identity piece into your community organizing?
Yes, that you know,
Come on, Olivia.
it has changed over time because our own organization has changed and also the community has changed over time. But I would say that um, local traditions are very centered in all the work that we do. Um,
And
and
how is art part of that? Because you yourself are a multidisciplinary artist. And so
yes,
how does art get curated in that community organizing?
well, we do different things. Like and most of the time it is um it is actually driven by the artists themselves or the um, or the folklorist because Loíza has Puerto Rico's most big and um, impressive carnival. It's a
I've seen some
5 day.
pictures. It to
Yeah,
me it's even better than the Marathon de Sambla. Okay? Don't
it's
don't play games, okay?
it's absolutely. I don't
Yes.
even have a word. It really is hypnotizing. It's a 5 day long traditional festival with processions and it is like all old carnivals. Um, it highlights one saint
What
and
is
the
the saint
saint
name so we can learn?
Santiago Apostol.
Okay. Thank you.
So
I'm gonna
he
play this
so
back so I could be like,
yes
what'd she say?
so Santiago Apostol. So Santiago Apostol, the figure, it is cared for during the whole year by different groups, and um, it is walked through a specific route by different processions each day, and each day is dedicated to those processions. So you have one day is the men, one day is only the women, one day is the
Right.
children, and around that you have all the sewing of the costumes, all the preparation of the masks, and for the different processions, and all the preparation of the food. So it really is very um, it's hallucinating. It really is very impressive. Um, so that happens once a year in July, and the rest of the year there are different preparations towards
Okay.
that. So so that means that the town has a lot of artisans, uh, costureras, is women that sew, and um, mask makers,
Okay.
painters, and also people that carve in wood. There's a tradition of carving
Oh
smaller
wow.
versions of the
Smaller
saint in wood.
figurines. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So and then there's a particular use of the coconut. The coconut is used to craft the masks.
Okay.
So there's some carving there that is done also. So all of that is very just it's just very normal. Like people are used to that level of colors, to that level of music, and then the music is the other aspect of the all the traditional music and the preparation of the instruments. They build the instruments. It's very very artisan work. So so all of this and some of those manifestations, either separately or together, are part of the programs. So we have music clubs, for example, that work with um, the barriles, the bomba, which is the
The
traditional rhythm of.
bomba.
Yeah. So we have these music clubs to do gender violence work with kids, and then we
Mm,
have the circle of survivors works with mostly with the talents that are in the group. So
right.
they can do painting, they can do tapestry with some of the women. So and all of the groups use some or various techniques. And sometimes we bring in um, artists that are not from Loíza, like stilt walkers or musicians or theater people that can bring, more tools to engage people for any purpose that is determined to the project. And of course, the events are used as outreach, massive outreach
Right.
activities for our organization and project. So last year's procession was huge, and we had like 300 volunteers and all the staff and the participants, and it was um it was just great. You should come.
I've been
You'd
telling
love
you I want my invitation, but so much shit be happening. I'm like, I don't know. So
you'd love it. So I think that you know, Taller Salud uses popular education approaches since the very beginning of the work.
right,
So that means that in the culture of the organization, we just don't believe there's an expert that's going to teach you anything. We just think there's shared expertise in a room,
mm,
and we are exchanging that. So we just we work from that belief. So I think that once over time, at the moment we are 23 people in the staff,
okay.
and half of those people are Loíza born, or they currently live in Loíza and work in
That's
Loíza.
unheard of. Can you repeat that again? Say it louder for the people in the back. You said that more
Yes,
than half your staff is actually the people that are impacted. Is that what you're
yes,
saying to me?
yes, yes. So that of course also changed my organization, because they brought in all this knowledge, all this traditions. They brought their families with them. So, so that gave us access um, to very specific, practices. There's a lot going on around animals in Loíza. The horses are being taken care of, the goats, the
Right.
roosters. So, there's this whole world that just happens and you don't ever see it. So those for us are the sources that people own, that they can always claim as theirs, and they can use to to tackle any storm, any hurricane, either symbolic or real. So we the work that we do is always trying to center that you already have what you need. You whatever it is that you need to survive, you already have it. It's inside you. It's
Mm,
old, ancestral. You just have to remember, how it's called and where to find it. And the way to remember it is to hear the music or to see the color or to. So that's how we do the work, and we couldn't do it without art.
right.
Because it would just be PowerPoint. It would be pointless. A pointless PowerPoint.
I mean, and you know how I feel about those PowerPoints. I was like, they're so
Yeah.
excruciating. So yes, yes.
So
I want
yeah. So that's the work.
I want to give this opportunity now back to you because this is, I think it's interesting like how this works. But I want to make sure that even though I have said, like, oh, this is my opinion on X, I want to give you the floor. Every time that I'm starting to end the show, I ask my guests a two-pronged question because I love complex things. I'm a complex person.
Okay.
And so I want to know the first part of the question is there anything that you were surprised I did not talk to you about, or that you feel like, oh, I wrote this thing down and I want to revisit it because it was important and I should have spoken about it? Or, and two, who would you like to see on the show next? Who needs a voice or whose story needs to be told?
Oh wow. Damn. Okay. Um,
Come on, Tanya.
I guess maybe I was surprised that we didn't talk about poverty and economic justice, and just access to resources, and what does that mean for women and women of color in
I
particular?
asked you that question. So if you want to answer my question, you're more than welcome. I asked you that question. I said, what
I'm just
does
saying, about
resources like mean?
yeah, I'm just saying, I'm just circling back
Okay.
to money and what does it mean to because I always tend to see things to try to understand the symbolic meaning of things and what does it mean to not have anything to offer and to participate in exchanges when people when the exchanges dynamic are in, what does it mean to not be able to participate?
Right.
Because that's what money is for, right? To be able to exchange something and
Right.
to not have any or access to any just leaves you out. It just leaves you out entirely from a complete dynamic that is social.
Right.
Um, so and what's the damage, right? What you start believing that is true about yourself because of that. So that's the damage. So yeah, I think women have we need to be talking more seriously about money.
If you want to have a symposium on money and you want to invite me to Puerto Rico, baby, I'll come tell you about some money, okay?
Yeah, we should do it. We should definitely
I'm
do it.
ready whenever.
Mm. I don't know who could be on this show next. I don't know. Um, Maybe a theater person.
Okay. It's interesting you say that because Daniel Beatty is I don't, he graduated from some college. I really don't keep up with people and where they graduate from, but he's an amazing theater productionist. I don't even know if that's a word, but that's what he do. And he had a fellowship at Emerson College, and he produced Mr. Joy. And I know Tangela Large, and you know what? I hadn't even she just had a baby. We just reconnected, and she's a wonderful actress, and I would love to have her on. So thank you for stirring that in me because I'm like, oh, I'm having a rapper on and I'm like, what I'm saying? Like, so this is, and we're doing a poetry show for free on Friday. So I'm trying to kind of keep it like, como se dice, variety, you know?
Yes.
So I just want to say thank you for those who are joining and those who are going to be listening later. The links in both the PayPal and also the the Network for Good link are listed in the description. They will be listed on the description in the podcast as well, because it is important to put your money where your mouth is. If you say you're organizing, if you say you have a knack for activism, and you are a person of power, privilege, and substance because of the power that's been handed down to you, I would wholeheartedly encourage you to shake some coins out of them pockets because y'all been spending money on the weirdest things. I see a lot of white women baking bread on the internet, and I'm like, did you even have a bread baker before COVID? Come on, sis. So I would really encourage people to give to this organization and make sure that even if it's like $5, $10, that you make a monthly subscription because the work that you all are doing is commendable. The fact that you have Black and Brown women in positions of power from the city that you are organizing in is amazing to me. To me, it is unheard of. I like to hear about collectives like this, and you all should be proud of the work you're doing. And I hope that you send that message. And when this gets uploaded, I would like for you to share it with those women because I'm inspired by all of them. I look forward to y'all's updates so much.
Thank you, Dee. Thank you so much. Gracias.
Gracias a ti, mi amor. And so, with that, I would like to thank everyone for being a part of episode number 30 of the full set. I hope that you all have a good night. And Tania, thank you again for being my guest and talking about what is important to you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Cuídate.